The worst train wreck in the history of Winnebago County, Illinois, happened shortly after midnight on December 15, 1901, when a passenger train and a freight met in a devastating head-on collision. The wreck occurred 2 miles east of Perryville on the Illinois Central Railroad. 10 people were killed instantly or shortly thereafter in the flames that enveloped the wreck. Another 24 people were injured in the horrific crash. The crash took place between a fast Omaha Flyer passenger train that was headed east toward Chicago and a westbound freight train. The passenger train was behind schedule and was trying to make up time. The freight train was aware of the delay of the passenger train and had adjusted its speed to allow it to pass the eastbound train. The two trains met on a short curve and smashed head-on into each other, and the metal beast crumpled as though made of paper. The front cars on the passenger train passed up and over the heavy freight cars that plowed through the cars, crumpling, crushing, and killing. The remaining cars toppled over with a thud, and the train screeched to a stop. There was an incredible, awful silence for just a moment that was soon broken by hissing steam from the train and the screams of the wounded. Then, a few minutes later, the ominous sound of the crackling of a fire. The shouts of the survivors grew even more frantic as they worked to extract the wounded before they were burned. Just when they thought the danger couldn't get any worse, the boiler on the freight train exploded and ripped the mangled cars apart, multiplying the terror. Killed on the freight train were David Bean of Freeport, the engineer of the freight train. His body was crushed and burned beyond recognition. Edward B. Carey was the fireman on the freight train, and like the engineer, he was crushed and burned. On the Omaha passenger train, Richard W. Ormsby of Chicago, the engineer, was killed. James Reardon was the fireman on the passenger train. He too was killed instantly, but these men were later considered the fortunate ones. 3 men were trapped in the smoker car. Others who escaped the train tried desperately to save them, but they were burned to death in the fire. George and William Reynolds were brothers who worked on the railroad as section foremen, and they died with Bert Coates, a Chicago newsboy. Their screams would long haunt the men who attempted to rescue them. Some of the survivors simply left the scene and walked home.